Okay, let's roll. สวัสดีครับ Dear member and guests, welcome to our monthly technical meeting. We hope you are well and healthy during this period, and really hope to see you all face to face soon. For those who do not know me, my name is Panit Jesadawaranont from Mubadala Petroleum. I'm the vice chairperson on this program. Please note that this session will be recorded. Today's meeting will be on the topic Thailand upstream activities and production outlook by Rystad Energy. And we have two honorable speakers tonight. We have Kun Pratik Pandey and Kun Vishruthi Acharya. So hope that this will enlighten us on Thailand future on the upstream business. The presentation will take 30 to 40 minutes. And if you have any question, please leave them in the Zoom chat box. If you prefer to ask in person, you can also do that. Please let us know in the chat box as well, and we will call your name. You can also follow through with the record session on the SPE Thailand section website. With a similar format, we will start the section with our section announcement, continue with the speaker introduction, and then followed by the presentation from the speaker, and then we will have the Q&A session. And the special thing for tonight, we also have the lucky draw as well. So hope that you also check your name on your Zoom login right now, because we will migrate all the name into the lucky draw pot. And hope you have very good luck tonight. So you should be all very familiar with our mission and vision for SPE, especially the part that make you feed you and we try to make you happy. And then we hope that this will be the platform that connect us together in a very relaxing environment, and hope that we can see you face to face very soon. On our memberships, now we have more than 600 members, combining 291 and 390 student members from Chulalongkorn, Suranari, Prince of Songkhla, and Chiang Mai universities student chapters. We also have 20 new professional members as well since the beginning of the year to date. And as usual, we still have 150 professional members labs and not yet renew their membership. So may I remind you to renew your membership as well. Please also take opportunity to invite your colleague to join our meeting, or even better, to join SPE, because we always need new members. SPE Thailand is still the largest professional oil and gas industry where you can regularly meet and greet in relaxed environment. For the upcoming meeting, we'll have the meeting SPE Distinguished Lecturer on the 1st of December, on the topic of what does the future look like for the oil and gas and energy sector, the energy transition by Ian Phillips. And then on 16th of December, we will have a regular SPE monthly technical meeting on the topic geospatial monitoring capabilities and benefit for oil and gas activities by Sean Donegan, CEO from Satellytics. And we hope that we could organize this event in the Landmark Hotel, Bangkok. And on 20th of January, we plan to have a SPE 2022 New Year opening by Dr. Saravut Keltatip, our Director General, Department of Mineral Field, at the Landmark Hotel Bangkok as well. And of course, this will be subject to the government regulation and situation around COVID-19 at that time. All right, let's look at our neighbor. So SPWLA Bangkok chapter will also held a meeting, a webinar on the topic algorithm assist platform location optimization using mixed integer programming for cluster development strategy in the Gulf Thailand by Kun Pirapon Ekawong from Pttp Exploration and Production. This is on 23rd of November. And this one will be online and the presentation will start at 3:30. So if you are interested, you can go to the SPWA website and register on the link. This is very important slide for us. This company are the sponsor who support us, our Thailand monthly technical meeting for these seasons. For any of you that who may just tune into this meeting, if you like to see your company name in here, please reach out to us, Kun Kasien, myself, or any of SPE board members. We appreciate your support, and of course, our society needs you. So thanks again to our speaker, and most importantly, thanks to our section sponsor here in front of you. Please also be informed that SPE Thailand also, we are online in various social media. So you can go to our website here, thaispe.org, to find new information on the upcoming events, new announcement, young professional, student scholarship, webinars, and much more. You can also follow us on Facebook, and you can also follow up on LinkedIn. Now you can simply pick up your mobile phone or iPad or any tablet you have, and you scan the QR code here, and this will take you to our social media. Without further ado, let me now hand over to our program chair, Kun Kasien, who will be the honor of introducing our speaker for tonight. Thank you, Kap. The floor is yours, Kun Kasien.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kap, Kun Panit. And good evening to everyone. My name is Kasien. I'm the SPE Thailand Program Chairperson. And always it is my honor to do the speaker introductions. But before that, I would like to give you some update, right? As Kun Panit mentioned, hopefully this will be the last month that Kun Panit and myself will see you on the screen. As next month, we are planning to have an actual meeting at the Landmark Hotel, our home venue. However, although the countries has opened up, but there are still quite a few restrictions in terms of seminar arrangement. And after this, I will open some of the poll that will need your feedback, whether you would like to join in person or not, so we can arrange accordingly. So that would pretty much be the things that I would like to get support from you. And also, if you stay to the end, this month we have the lucky draw as well, and the two lucky draw prize. So just to remind that your names that you're joining, we have 56 people joining at the moment, which is very good. Just make sure that your name is not iPhone or anything like that. When it's come up as a lucky draw, we don't know who to give, right? And the prize will only be applicable to the person who is in Thailand, because we will give the prize next time you join our meeting. Okay, so without further ado, let me start introducing our speaker for this evening. We are lucky to have two speakers from Rystad today. The first one, Kun Pratik Pandey. Prateek is a vice president within the upstream analysis team at Rystad Energy, primarily focused on Southeast Asia region, with a Bachelor of Engineering in Oil and Gas from a University of India and 8 solid years of experience in the industry. He has worked offshore and on global oil and gas M&As before his ongoing engagement with Rystad Energy. Prateek's well-rounded knowledge in engineering concepts and practical approach provided an easy way to establish his role as an analyst in the industry. From multiple research papers with SPE and IPA, views on investment outlook in Southeast Asia and fiscal policy. He has always been very keen on speaking about upstream trends, project economics, and regional outlook. The second speaker is Kun Vishruthi Acharya. Vishruthi is a senior analyst in the upstream team at Rystad Energy as well. Her primary focus area include upstream research in Southeast Asia. With 3 years of experience in the industry, Vishruthi has worked on deep analysis of oil and gas assets in Southeast Asia, including reserved, productions, explorations, historic financials, and operational forecast. She is an engineer by background and holds a BE degree from BMS College of Engineering at Bangalore. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcome the speaker for this evening. And now Prateek and Vishruthi, you may go ahead and fire away.
Thank you, Kassian. Thanks for this opportunity from SPE Thailand. And from the slides I've seen so far, I see you guys regularly have a very interesting set of sessions, and we are glad that we can contribute and share some of the slides, but would love to interact more with the entire SPE Thailand section, meet a few of you when we visit the country soon, hopefully. Yeah, so without further delay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you can't see that in next few seconds. Okay. I hope you can see the slides now.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So the topic for discussion today is to just go through an overview of upstream activities in Thailand, look at what is the production outlook in the near term, and what are some of the highlights in terms of events for the upstream sector, specifically in Thailand. We'll try to relate it a bit to entire Southeast Asia to, give a quick picture on how other countries are performing on the similar features. But so basically, the entire discussion is more or less focused around 4 key lenses. We'll start with a brief overview on the historical significance of Thailand within Southeast Asia in different categories in terms of investments, or is it in terms of production? How crucial is Thailand for the region Southeast Asia? And then we move on to a bit more details on what are the near-term forecast in different perspectives. Let it be production, if it is well outlook, well drilling, or what is the gas demand outlook for Thailand in the near term. Following that, we'll discuss a very interesting event that is usually being talked about for last few months in Thailand upstream, is the handover of Irawan and Bongkot fields to Pttp, with a few more details on this process. And then following that, we'll discuss something interesting about how Pttp is expanding globally as well, apart from its presence within Thailand. I'll start with the discussion. The chart here is basically entire Southeast Asia oil and gas production. We have split this chart by countries, and on the bottom you see that the two top countries, which are quite significant in this split, with over 65 to 70% of the production, is actually Indonesia and Malaysia. These two countries obviously have a good mix of oil and gas both. But however, apart from these two countries, if we look at which is the other country that has consistently been the third largest contributor within Southeast Asia, it is Thailand. Although at the same time, I'll agree that there has been a lot of talk about either Vietnam, or on top of that is Myanmar taking up and leading to become the third largest country within Southeast Asia in terms of production. But that has not happened so far, and unless Vietnam manages to progress quite well on the top blocks that the country has, it is unlikely that they will surpass Thailand's production numbers in the next decade at least. So we foresee that Thailand's domination as the third largest contributor in terms of oil and gas production is likely to continue at least for this decade. So from production, moving on to just a bit of detail. So basically, if we look at Southeast Asia entire production, around 75% of it comes from offshore areas. And within offshore areas, if I further split, this comes around 85% from the shallow water developments. So the chart here we have drawn from one of our products, UCube. What we have done here is this is just the shallow water production from Southeast Asia, and we have ranked it by different countries, split by oil and gas, liquids and gas basically. We see that Malaysia is obviously the largest contributor here. The reason being most of the upstream activities there are focused in offshore areas. But again, in this case for the shallow water production, Thailand is at par with Indonesia, in fact, which hints that there is huge opportunity still for the service players, for the offshore E&Ps with the expertise in the offshore areas to continue working in Thailand. And there are enough assets that are in play right now. So it's significant that the country has similar volume of output as Indonesia from the shallow water areas. So on the next slide, what we have is the same production now split by some of the crucial operators, because for Thailand's E&P and the upstream sector to continue growing, they need international investments, they need attention and interest from the international players and the regional players as well. And if we look at the chart here, we see that we have players from very different segments. You talk about NOC, that is obviously leading in terms of the production in the country. But apart from that as well, in the chart here, you see 3 oil and gas majors present in the country. Although the share of production is much smaller, and even in the case of Chevron, it will likely reduce next year when it hands over the 2 top blocks in its portfolio. But still, their presence itself signifies that the region has potential. They still see these fields to continue producing, at least if not expand the current portfolio. They see that these fields still have opportunity to continue producing at a certain rate. Apart from majors as well, there are regional players, there are independents. On the chart you will see players like Medco Energy, Tap Oil. These are as well present in the country. So we see a different mix of players. So it's not like it's only an NOC that is ideally leading most of the upstream activities in the country. So after that, what I have here is speaking about the NOC, let's look at how different NOCs in Southeast Asia have performed very recently. So what I've done here is this is split by three significant NOCs that we have in Southeast Asia. And if we see the growth that has come for Petronas was in the period of 2011 to 2015. This was a significant period where Petronas took steps to expand globally with a lot of acquisitions in the Middle East and in African portfolios. Again, for the case of Pertamina, we see a sharp increase in the production from year 2017 to around 2019. This is mainly because of the PSC expiries that were there in Indonesia recently. They were handed over to Pertamina based on a certain bidding process, and Pertamina was awarded those blocks. So it was not ideally an acquisition or a new development, but more of the handover of a mature field or an old producing block. The reason why I'm differentiating this from the acquisition is that if you see just the following year from 2019 onwards, you also see a decline in the production. So it's difficult to sustain the additional production that the portfolio reflected in 2018 in the longer run, because these are mature blocks. But however, in the case of Petronas, you see the production has been sustained at least at the similar rates, since these were new developments and these were not just the handover of the mature blocks. If we now move on to the case of PTTEP, they have grown their presence obviously in Thailand as well. And for not just Thailand, outside of Thailand as well, they have made some acquisitions. They have some very crucial gas and LNG projects in under development phase. They are likely to see more increase in the international portfolio from the production from the international portfolio. For PTTP, we do see a consistent growth in the production, at least for last 4 to 5 years. And this still does not include the sharp uptick that we expect next year when the top 2 blocks are handed over to the NOC. So this again, we might see a steep increase in that case again in terms of production. So it is significant that PTTP still is performing at par in terms of growth percentage with the other NOCs in the region. In terms of opportunity, otherwise for the players in Thailand, if we look at the same production profile which we discussed earlier for Thailand, I've split this by life cycle of the assets that are producing in Thailand. And we see that there is significant share of assets that you see here are producing greater than 75%. What this means is over 75% of the assets in the country. So these assets have already produced more than 75% of their actual estimated recoverable reserves. So they are ideally in a phase where they're likely to decline. There will be some well shutdowns. There will be a lot of opportunities for the abandonment facilities going forward in Thailand. So that's one of the highlights, but there are a lot of more activities that my colleague Vishruthi will take you through in the next few slides. With that, I'll hand it over to Vishruthi to continue with the next set of slides.
Thank you, Prateek. Moving on to the next slide. To understand the upstream activities of any country, say from the production to the drilling to any of the activities, discoveries plays a very important role, correct? So in order to understand how Thailand has performed in its discovered resources over the entire last decade, we have a graph here which shows the discovered resources every 5 years from 1970s to recent 2021. As you can observe, the discovered volumes have declined significantly, say after 2000, with no major discoveries since then. However, there are a few trends which are interesting. The first one, if you see the table above, 84% of the discovered volumes from 1971 to 1975 was gas, right? But when you see just the previous 5 years, that is from 2016 to 2021, less than 1% of the discovered volumes was gas. So we can definitely say that there has been an uptick in the liquids production. the entire discovered volumes per se have decreased, but the share of liquids production has definitely increased over the years and over the decades per se. Moving on to another trend, that is onshore and offshore. From 1971 to 1975, or the entire 90s, right, you can see that about 100% of the discovered resources were actually from the offshore areas. But since the years passed and currently, we see that only 67% or 66 to 67% is from the offshore areas. So with this, we come to like one of the major trends that is happening in Thailand these days, which is onshore liquid discoveries are taking an uptick, majorly because of Pan-Orient Energy expanding its exploration portfolio and also, you know, drilling exploration wells extensively in the country over the last few years. And this decline in discovered volumes is mainly attributable to the decline in the exploration activity, which I will take forward in the next slide. Another important or another interesting note before I go on to the next slide is that the entire country's production currently is driven by discoveries that were made prior to 2000, right? As you can see from the graph. And only 3% of the entire discovered volumes are currently in the pre-FID stage. What I mean by pre-FID stage is basically they've not yet been approved or gone into the development stage. Moving on to the exploration activity in the country, we see that the appraisal well count has led the way in the last decade. So in the first chart, we see the entire Thailand exploration well count that is split by wildcat and appraisals. So from 2010 onwards, the quantity of appraisal wells that were drilled was really high, and which is also reflected in the discovered volumes, right? Because there was no new discovery per se, but the resources were increasing owing to the increased appraisal drilling. The exploration activity in Thailand peaked in 2013 with about 95 wells that were drilled and declined by nearly 95% to date in 2021, where we had less than 5 wells that are being drilled. It is also interesting that Pttp and Chevron served as operator on around 50% of all the exploration wells drilled in Thailand from 2014 to 2017. But after that, these two players drilled almost no exploration wells in the country. Instead, we have local players like Pan-Orient Energy and Mubadala Petroleum who have led the exploration scenarios in the country. Another interesting note, as you can see on the right side graph, is the entire Thailand exploration wells that is split by the onshore and offshore split. The offshore exploration fell off a cliff over the last decade, while the onshore exploration showed a significant increase compared to the previous decade. With the oil price crash that happened in 2015, and again, you know, with the COVID coming and also the market crisis in 2020, the risk-taking appetite of the operators have gone down globally. Now, which is what is reflected in the offshore well activity. So because the risk-taking was less, offshore activity also decreased. We at Rystad Energy estimate the recovery of exploration well count to also be very slow, with less than about 15 wells that are drilled until 2025. And the next decade is majorly going to be exploration by Pttp in its newly acquired G161 and G261 blocks. So from exploration, we move on to the most obvious, the production trend. Following a similar trend in Southeast Asian countries, Thailand is also expected to show a decline in its production from 2020 onwards. On the left, we have the entire Thailand gas production that is split by life cycle. We see that from 2012 to say 2019, the production was almost at the same level and was maintained at about 500 kilobarrels of oil equivalent per day. But in 2020, it fell down to about 455 kilobarrels per day. And that was majorly because of the COVID downfall. Now in 2020, not only did the production decline, but there was also decline in drilling activity, which in turn, I think led to, you know, the recovery of production being slower, right? But this trend in production that you see on the left is much better than many SEA countries, where Indonesia, which has shown a decline for the entire decade. So for this sustained production to happen, there was a lot of investments that were put on the drilling side in Thailand. Owing to the lack of new developments in the country is also one of the reasons we see that the production is not increasing, right? So if you see on the left side graph, the green portion, which is the portion that is still in the discovery phase and has not been approved, is very little. right? So there's no major discovery that is coming online to boost the production in the country. So I think the best option for Thailand is to maximize the output from the currently producing fields. Now, when we move on to the liquids production side, that is on the right, the main difference that we see is a slighter increase in the discovery portfolio, right? So the production from discovery life cycle is expected to be quite more. And this is clearly from the reflection that we saw in the first slide on discovered volumes, where the discovered volumes of liquids was much more than the gases. So all those small discoveries are expected to come online, say post 2025, and try to increase or recover the liquids production. And some of the main operators is again Mubadala Petroleum, which is now expected to add a new wellhead platform at its Nong Yao field, and also the Nong Nuk fields and other small discoveries in the region. And one of the major significant developments in the country is Ubon, which is in block B1227 and is operated by Chevron. So we have to now wait and watch how Chevron actually takes up the development activities on this asset post the takeover that is expected to happen in 2022 and 2023. Another interesting fact is the development drilling in the region. If you see the graph in the slide, we see the entire development drilling activity in Thailand that is split by supply group, which is basically the onshore and offshore wells. So in 2014, we see an uptick in the production, in the development well drilling. This was majorly because there was a dire need for increased domestic production, and therefore the companies like Chevron and Pttp boosted their development activity and increased the number of wells. While a similar downtick or a downside was seen in 2017, and it was about 45% a decline in its in the number of wells that were drilled. This was majorly owing to the weaker oil prices and also the drilling plan adjustment of the nearly expired concessions. However, for this drilling activity that we see that there is going to be a small uptick, say from 2022 onwards. So 2021, there was extremely less number of wells owing to the COVID and all the other market crises that happened. And 2022, we expect a slight uptick. And this is majorly because of the takeover, where Pttp has extensive plans to drill more exploration and development wells at its acquired blocks. So from 2022 onwards, we see an uptick, and that is expected to slowly maintain the drilling activity. However, for this to be reflected in the production portfolio, it majorly depends on the success of the drilling activity, the performance of the wells that were drilled, and most importantly, I think at this stage, is Pttp gaining access and preparing the facilities for the drilling, right? So Pttp is currently yet to reach an agreement with Chevron to access the Iravan gas field. And the initial plans were actually that Pttp will acquire in 2019 and conduct survey activities and finally start the drilling activity by say 2021. But that has been delayed owing to the disputes between Chevron, Thailand government, and there is no agreement that is reached between Pttp and Chevron. Apart from the major blocks, say Iravan and Bongkot, the country also looks forward to extensive drilling at its Arthit field, which is present in block B14A. That's also an important field contributing to a significant portion of the production in the country. So we spoke about the production, the drilling. Now we see how this is actually going to impact the gas utilization in the country. The graph that we see here is the demand to supply graph, right? So we have the demand that fell down in 2020. Globally, we saw that trend because of the COVID and market scenarios. But now we expect this demand to slowly increase and reach about 60 billion cubic meters by 2030. Now, the current gas production in Thailand is about 27 billion cubic meters. And as discussed earlier, the domestic gas production is further expected to decline and show a rate of 6% year-on-year decline every year till 2030. In order to meet this increasing demand, the imports in Thailand are of two types, mainly pipeline and the LNG. The pipeline imports from Thailand, for Thailand, are majorly from Myanmar and the Malaysia-Thailand JDA region. Thailand has been importing gas from Myanmar since 2000 and from the JDA region since it started producing in 2005. In 2021, around 1.4 million cubic feet per day of gas was imported through pipelines, and 55% of this was from Myanmar. The import contract with Myanmar is set to expire in 2030, and with the declining production that we observe in JDA, this production gap of the pipeline imports is also expected to be fulfilled by the LNG imports. Now, moving on to the LNG imports, Thailand actually started its LNG import way back in 2011, and this is expected to contribute over 60% of the demand in 2030. The LNG in the country is imported as a part of 4 LNG contracts, namely 20-year contract with Qatar and 15-year contracts with Shell, BP, and Petronas, together with about 5.5 million tons per annum. PTT also imports LNG under spot contracts in order to meet these demands. So as I said, by 2030, around 60% of the demand is expected to be catered by the LNG imports. And with this in mind, there are a few LNG projects that are also in the pipeline, right? So there's an LNG terminal construction at Ban Nong Phep with a gasification capacity of about 7.5 MTPA, which is due for completion in 2022, and several other projects that are in the pipeline. So I think with this, we see that the decade for LNG importing in Southeast Asia is, the upcoming decade, right? So with Myanmar joining the LNG wagon in 2020, Vietnam shortly, expected to start importing LNG, and Indonesia also reaching as a net importer by the end of the decade, and also Thailand expecting majority of its demand to be catered by, say, LNG. Southeast Asia is definitely a region to look forward for LNG imports. Moving forward, one of the highlight events in Thailand, and that we are all looking forward to see how things pan out after this, is the handover of Erawan and Bongkot clusters to PTTP. So currently the Erawan block, which includes the blocks B10 to B13, are home to about 20 fields, including major fields like Platong, Surat, Plamuk, to name a few. These fields are currently producing close to 215 kilobarrels of oil equivalent per day and are owned by a consortium of Chevron, Mitsui, and PTTP. The Bongkot cluster, on the other hand, includes fields in the greater Bongkot North and Bongkot South region and contribute to nearly 145 kilobarrels of oil equivalent per day currently. And they are owned by a consortium of PTTP and Total Energies. These PSCs are set to expire in 2022 and 2023 respectively, and will be handed over to PTTP and Mubadala. So the Erawan block, or the G161, which is the newly awarded block, will be owned by PTTP and Mubadala on a 60-40 basis, with PTTP serving as operator. And the Bongkot block, or the G261, will be owned by PTTP with 100% ownership and operatorship. So now that, PTTP is also expanding its portfolio outside and taking up more operated portfolio in its own country, now we have to wait and see how things pan out and how PTTP effectively, either sustains the production or boosts the production in these Erawan and Bongkot blocks. Just to see how this takeover is impacting the production scenarios in the country, here we have the Thailand entire oil and liquids production split by company. Now, if we see from 2015 to say 2021, over 70% of the production is contributed by Chevron and PTTP and 10% by Mitsui. But going forward, 70% of the production is expected to be only by PTTP, right? And then we have about 12% by Mubadala, which will be the second biggest contributor in the country, followed by Chevron, which will have a few blocks that apart from the, Erawan and Bongkot clusters. Another interesting thing to note is that Total Energies, which currently has stakes in the Bongkot project, will give out its stakes to PTTP, and after which will have no producing blocks in the country. Just to understand Chevron's portfolio post the handover, we see that Chevron has 5 more blocks apart from the ones it's going to hand over in the country. And these are expected to produce about 40 to 50 kilobarrels of oil equivalent per day from 2024 to 2030, as you can see in the graph on the right. So I think the 3 major blocks will be block 1227, which includes fields like Pylon, Moragot, and also the yet to be sanctioned Ubon field. Then adjacent to that is Block 14A, consisting of the Arthit field, which, as I said, is one of the biggest or most significant fields in the production for the country. And another important significant block is B832, which includes fields like Benchamas, Malivan, and Chaba. So all of these are expected to contribute a significant portion of the production from 2024 onwards. On the right, we see that there is a slight uptick in the production from 2025 to 2027. And then, there's a stability and then a drop, right? So the uptick is majorly because we expect the Ubon field to come online during that time frame. And that is, one of the major fields that we are all looking forward to be sanctioned. And I think one of the major fields that Thailand, as of now, has in the pipeline to be sanctioned in the country. So with all this PSC expiry and the handover, here we have a list of blocks which are expected to expire or have PSC renewals from 2022 to 2030. We've seen that all these B10 to B13 and B15 to B17 are expected to be handed over. But apart from that, we also have blocks like B827, G443, and these are from different operators, right? So we have Medco, Mubadala, and Chevron, which have blocks that are expected to expire soon. Owing to the increased interest that is shown by Mubadala by acquiring interest in the Iravan block, the country could really look into renewal of these blocks to retain the international players' interests in the country. And another interesting thing we've seen in Southeast Asia per se is that PSC expiry does not mean just the exit of the country, a company in the country, right? So it's an opportunity for regional operators to acquire stakes in the block and also contribute to the production in the country. So with these PSCs coming to an end, we now have to see if they get renewed or if they get taken over by other companies and see who are the new players that will be in the scenarios. So we've seen how the production, has been impacted, the drilling activity has been impacted. And one thing that is for sure is that we need renewed exploration in the country in order to have new discoveries and, new developments in the future. So for that, Thailand, after say 2007, had its first bidding round, that is the Thailand 23rd bidding round in 2021, where it offered one onshore block, the L164, which was very close to the biggest onshore field, which is Sirikit in Thailand. Right, so this bidding round was completed in August 2021, and now there's plans of the Thailand 24th bidding round, which is planned. Three offshore blocks, G163, 263, and 363, are expected to be awarded and offered in this bidding round. As you can see from the figure, these three blocks are very close to all the significant fields in the country. So G163 is very close to Iravan, 263 to Pylon, and 363 to Bongkot. So in case of any discovery, the time period to development could be shorter, owing to the availability of facilities in the vicinity. And also interesting that the new blocks will be offered as per the new PSC terms in the country. Moving on to understand what I mean by the new PSC terms is that Thailand, for the first time ever, has introduced production sharing contracts in its country. So before we just go on to Thailand in general, we see that from the COVID era, Malaysia and Indonesia have introduced new fiscal terms over the last year and also have made changes to their existing fiscal terms. Right? So the change from royalty tax to PSC model is majorly to aid in the risk sharing. Risk sharing PSC is basically split between the government and the contractor, while in the royalty, it was only the contractor who had to bear the entire risk in the country, right? So with these changes, now we have to see how the companies participate in the upcoming bidding rounds. And I think one of the major purposes for introducing new PSC models is to simplify the operations and also maximize the economics on projects. So the bid blocks that were awarded, say in 2018, that was G161 and 262, were also awarded in terms of PSC terms in 2018. Moving on to another interesting trend, we see that the Thailand gas prices follow a similar trend to the East Asia LNG prices. So average gas price in 2020 stood at about $6.13 per KCF, which was a decline of about 8% from 2019. So prices are expected to slowly recover in 2021. And with a spike in the LNG prices in 2021, we now wait to see if this aids and has positive signs on the gas projects in the country, since the trend is seen to be similar in the historic years. Now, after we've covered, I think, most of the upstream activities that happen in Thailand, we just move on to understand Thailand NOC's portfolio and its activities in Thailand and globally. Pttp has expanded its portfolio extensively over the last years and has entered 5 new countries since 2018. So in January 2018, the company was a successful bidder for 2 blocks in Mexico, and it also made 2 new discoveries in these blocks. The second country it entered was UAE, where Pttp was one of the first companies to sign offshore concession agreements in the Abu Dhabi's first ever open licensing round. And in 2020, it was offered another block in addition to the 2 blocks it acquired in 2019. With Pttp's acquisition of Partex Holdings in 2019, it entered 3 new countries, Oman, Kazakhstan, and Angola. In Oman, it has acquired interests in 2 significant projects, the PDO project and the Mukhaizna development. And in Kazakhstan, it also acquired some interests in the Dunga project. Not only did it enter new countries, but it also expanded its portfolio, say in Malaysia, Brazil, to name a few. When we see that all the operators globally are reducing their production targets and reducing all the capex revisions, we see that Pttp is revising their production targets and increasing it, and it currently stands at about 405,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day for 2021. This is majorly because of the expansion and also owing to new startups in these new countries, right? So we had the Oman PDO project starting up. We also had Malaysia's Block H that came online last year. So all of these are aiding in the production, and hence Pttp is revising its production targets. If we see in the M&A scenarios, Pttp was one of the largest acquirers globally in 2019. Moving on to just understand the Pttp's major discoveries since 2015, we see that there were several discoveries and none of them were majorly in the home country. Everything was in its expanded portfolio, right? So one of the biggest discovery was Lng Leba in Malaysia, where it served as an operator. And apart from that, we had Orchid and other discoveries in Australia. And we had many discoveries in 2021 in Malaysia. To name a few were Dokong, Serong, and Kulintang, which were significant discoveries. And surprisingly, all of them were also operated by Pttp itself. And as discussed just before, it entered Mexico in 2018 and made 2 discoveries with combined volumes of 250 million barrels, that is Polok and Chinwol, in 2020. It's not only discoveries, Pttp also has a list of upcoming approvals. We have the Lng Leba, as discussed, one of the biggest discoveries in the region. We also have Cash Maple in Australia, Ubon, not to mention in Thailand, the only thing that we're waiting for to be sanctioned in Thailand. And we have Vietnam's Block B gas project that is also in the pipeline, Myanmar's Ong Sinka, and also the new discoveries in Malaysia and Mexico. It is also interesting that more than 50% of these significant approvals or sanctioning activity is operated by Pttp itself, right? So Pttp actually reduced its planned 2020 and 2021 capex, because of which many of these projects were deferred and moved to the future years. So we have several of these projects in the pipeline for the upcoming years. I think with that, we come to the end of the session. We'll be open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Pratik and Vishruthi. Very nice presentation. May I start with the question from the floor in the chat box? Let me go through one by one. Start with Kun Chris. His question is, could you please share fuel side creaming curves for last 40 years if you have it on hand?
A very interesting question, but unfortunately not in hands right now because we're just carrying this the specific slides. But definitely something that we can share if he can drop us an email on the address that we mentioned at the start of our slides, or we can drop it on the chat box for his reference, and then on his email we can get back to him with the details.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The second one from Kun Cherry from Mubadala Petroleum. On slide number 12, do you think that there is any chance that LNG import post 2030 will be met by pipeline import from Thai and Cambodia overlapping area? Do you have any insight on that?
I think pipeline imports from Myanmar and JDA region is definitely not, in the pipeline because Myanmar, as we said, the contract is expiring in 2030, and the JDA region is showing a decline in production with no new discoveries there as well. Thailand Cambodia region is interesting, but we see that there's not much exploration that's happening there yet. So I think the first phase will be to do a lot more exploration there, come up with a discovery, and then see if they can actually contribute to exporting the gas that they produce to Thailand.
Right. So I agree with what Vishruthi just mentioned about the pipeline import. So basically, the volumes that we see right now from Myanmar, they are obviously declining because most of the blocks which are currently supplying gas are in a production decline. It's difficult to revive the production by a significant percentage, but there will be efforts to at least consistently, keep the production volumes at the current levels. But going forward, it is difficult to see drastically the JDA of Thailand, Cambodia replacing the Myanmar imports because there has been barely any progress in the recent years. So it will take some time. It will take more interest from the operators, more success in terms of exploration and appraisals. Only then, probably not in the next decade at least. Post that is something we can, keep that as one of the factors.
Okay, thank you. The third one is from Kun David. I think it's from one of your slides on the gas production forecast. So I think his question is around the ocean forecast. Is it predicted that PTTEP gonna fail the DCQ following the takeover of G1 and G2 blocks?
Yeah, so I'll let Vishruthi probably answer that. Yeah,
I think it again comes down to how much PTTP can actually access and drill. It all depends on the drilling activity now, right? It all depends on the success of the wells that they have, because with the current wells that they have, we see that the production is declining and they might not be able to reach the DCQ levels. So it all depends on when they get access, build their facilities, do the drilling, and then the performance of the wells that are drilled. So I think it's something that we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and to answer that a bit, just in yes or no, yes, it includes the additional production that is we potentially foresee from Bongkot drilling activities. But again, given the historical performances that we have seen in the region, for example, Pertamina has not been very successful to revive production from some of the similar mature blocks. And given the lower gas prices that PTTP is expecting on these blocks, it is difficult to continue the very aggressive drilling campaign for a longer run if the wells do not perform at that level. So once the takeover is done, as what Vishruthi mentioned, and the well's performance is reflected, only then, we can be very confident about it. But so far, we believe that it is going to be one of the challenges for PTTEP in the near term to revive the production significantly based on what the DCQ levels are.
Right, thank you. I think I got another question from Kun Jean or Kun Chong. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. I guess that he prefer to ask in person. So please go ahead.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Please. Yeah, sure. Please.
Okay. Hi. Good evening, everybody. Very basic, simple questions. We are vendors of PTTEP, and we are involved in future works over G1 and G2 starting by year 2022, and we just would like to have your opinion on the update on the timeline whenever it's going to be complete of the takeover from PTTEP over G1 LR1.
So yeah, there is some echo. Yeah. So obviously, yeah, I understand. This is one of the significant activity that has eyes of weight. Everyone is looking forward to this, and based on the current outlook that we believe for this handover, it is likely in the first half of next year, potentially. So if we speak about precisely the drilling activities, we can expect them to kick off sometime in the second half and going forward. But at the same time, this is not just a 6 months peak in the drilling activity. We see that this aggressive drilling is likely to continue for the next 2 to 3 years at least, because that is something that PTTEP definitely has accounted for in their plans if they want to give an attempt to, maximize the output from these blocks. I hope that answers.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Any more questions from the floor, or let me know in the chat box if you prefer to ask yourself.
I think no more questions, but over.
I am about to count 1, 2, 3. Okay. I think,
No, if I could just quickly summarize on few of the positive points that we reflect from the current activities in Thailand. So obviously, if PTTEP is successful, this is also a confidence booster for the upcoming exploration bidding rounds and all of that, because the blocks are in the similar vicinity. And also for other operators who are, who have some PSC expiries coming up in the near term, they would want to continue their interest in the current portfolio. So a lot depends on how this entire handover works out, and additionally how is the reaction of upstream players to the new PSC terms, to the new exploration bidding round. These are few things that will be a highlight in the country, I think, in the next couple of years at least.
I think now we have a few more questions. Maybe start from Kun Chris. I saw you raise your hand, please. I think you are still on mute. Okay, maybe let me take your question from the chat box then. How about the impact of CCS on the legacy fields?
Right, something that always comes up in any E&P related discussion these days. So one of the impacts we have already seen is it is unlikely to see a huge interest from big upstream players, global upstream players, unless there is lesser risk. But one of the advantages that entire Southeast Asia probably has is the share of gas discoveries. If the potential opportunities are in terms of gas developments, we still see that there will be interest from upstream players, global upstream players. But if it is oil projects, which has been some of the recent discoveries in Thailand, it is unlikely that the international players will be very much interested. But we do see that the regional players in this case might see this as an opportunity to to increase their portfolio in Thailand. But overall, so this is one of the impacts that it is difficult for the majors and IOCs to expand currently in Thailand, considering the CCS and their own targets for the net zero. So that's one of the factors. I mean, yeah, apart from that, I think for PTTEP, this is not a major concern as of now, because their portfolio still is expanding a lot globally as well. So they will look out to balance the emissions in that case. But yeah, the interest from international players is one thing that is significant, and that is not just for Thailand. In fact, I would say that is for Indonesia, Malaysia, and even for some of the countries in Africa. This is one of the concerns. Yeah.
All right. Another question from Kun Vikanta, sorry if I mispronounce your name. Comparing across the globe, how is Thailand regulation and policy supporting oil and gas companies in order to continue the investment? Do you have any insights?
Very interesting. So I remember we did a very interesting analysis very recently on the updated PSC terms in Southeast Asia, and how do the project break-evens look under these new PSC terms as compared to some of the other dominant countries globally. For, let's say, in the shelf area, what is the break-even of a certain project in Africa, in some of the African countries and some of the Southeast Asian countries. And we see Thailand historically as well has been more favorable practically as compared to Indonesia and Malaysia, both to the contractors. One of the very significant positives is the policies haven't been changing very often, because that is one of the issues that some of the players have found in other countries in Southeast Asia, that there are a lot of changes in the policies recently, but that has not been the concern in Thailand. They have changed it now, getting an option to move into the PSC, and that is something probably will be welcomed by the operators. So it is favorable, but again, depends on if we see that there are additional challenging projects. Potentially something that can be considered is some of the incentives for the large projects, for the projects which are significant for the country's domestic production. Some of those projects can be standing apart, but apart from that, overall in Thailand, project economics has usually not been a concern for them to get delayed so far historically. And I would say that is the reason that you see Total is present in the country. ExxonMobil was there at the time. Chevron had a huge portfolio in Thailand. So they have been in the country for years now. That is, one of the impacts of that.
Right. Thank you very much. Any further question from the floor? Counting 1, 2, and 3 sold. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Kun Pratik and Kun Vishruthi. So we're moving on to a little bit more fun side, hopefully. The lucky draw. So while you are enjoying the presentation, I believe that Kun Kasian is enrolling our number into the high-tech lucky draw machine. Have you got it ready, Kun Kasian?
Yes, I do. Just 1 second. Let me share the lucky draws screen.
Should we let them know the price first?
Okay. I'm not sure if you see the screen.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Kurpanit. So the price is for those of you who are in Thailand and able to come to our next meeting, you'll get a bottle of red wine. We have 2 prices for this one. So again, the criteria is you have to be in Thailand, and we'll keep that for you. So let me start the first spin. Okay. Kun Ponsuri.
Congratulations, Kap.
Please identify yourself so we make sure that you are still around with us. And
Yeah, maybe you can chat in our chat box and we will direct reply to you.
I'm not sure if you're still there, because if not, then we will give this to somebody else. Okay, Kun Ponsuri 1, Kun Ponsuri 2, Kun Ponsuri 3. Okay, I assume you're not around, so let me do the redraw.
I think she is still active, Kun Kasin.
Okay, please identify yourself if you're there. Okay, Munavir. Please identify yourself. Yes, okay, Munavir, thank you.
We give yes, okay.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Please, stay to the end so I can find a way to to talk to you and make sure we know who you are when you come next time, right? Okay, so first, I can't see the first person confirmed, so let me redraw. Okay.
Panit.
Kun Pan. Okay, please identify yourself. Okay, excellent.
Yes,
so
okay, excellent.
Thank you very much. Just one quick thing before moving back to Kun Panit. I would like to get your feedback on the general arrangement of this meeting. So I'll open another poll. Basically, just ask whether this meeting is meet your expectation, exceed or below. Very simple questions. Okay. All right, Kun Panit, back to you, Kap.
So Kun Kasian, are you gonna share the poll result or?
No, for next month meeting, no, we will not share the result.
Okay, Kap, no problem. Okay. Nothing much really. The most important slide simply is our last slide. So again, we reach out the end and this conclude our webinar for today. As Kun Kasian mentioned, if you have any improvement or any suggestion, please share with us. We will have the link for you to fill in, or you can send the email or even put your comment in Facebook or LinkedIn. We always appreciate your feedback. So thanks again to board of speakers. And again, thanks to our section sponsor, as you can see here in front of you. So enjoy the rest of the evening and good night on behalf of SPE Thailand. สวัสดีครับ
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
for joining.
Bye.
Thank you ครับ
Thank you ค่ะ
Thank you
ขอบคุณครับ
ขอบคุณครับ
Kun Pen and Kun Munawir, please stay for 1 second.
We need your full name and contact.